He was supposed to be the next great American golfer, the heir to Tiger, the brash, fearless, impossibly talented kid who beat the best players in the world before he turned 25 and looked like he would dominate for a decade. And then Anthony Kim vanished, for 11 years, into one of the most baffling disappearances professional sport has ever seen. Now he has spoken about his career, and what he revealed is as heartbreaking as the silence that preceded it. Here's the full story. For anyone too young to remember, it is difficult to convey just how electric Anthony Kim was at his peak. He did not play golf like a careful, calculating professional. He played it like a gunslinger, aggressive and fearless and utterly convinced of his own greatness. He wore a belt buckle with his initials in giant letters. He attacked pins that sensible players avoided. He had swagger in a sport that often punishes swagger, and for a few short years, the swagger was completely justified. Kim turned professional in 2007 and almost immediately announced himself as something special. In 2008, he won twice on the PGA Tour, including a dominant victory at the Wachovia Championship, where he overpowered a world-class field. He climbed into the top 10 in the world rankings. He was 23 years old, and then came the moment that made everyone believe he was destined for superstardom. The 2008 Ryder Cup at Valhalla. Kim, the young rookie, was sent out in the lead singles match against Sergio Garcia, one of Europe's most accomplished players, and he destroyed him. He won 5-4 in a performance of such fearless brilliance that it helped power the United States to a rare victory and announced Anthony Kim as the future of American golf. The following year, he made history at the Masters, recording 11 birdies in a single round at Augusta National, a tournament scoring record. He was 23 years old, holding records at the most prestigious course in golf, beating Europe's best in the Ryder Cup, and being openly discussed as the player most likely to challenge Tiger Woods for supremacy. The ceiling appeared limitless. Quick pause. If you remember how electric Anthony Kim was at his peak, the fearless kid everyone thought would be the next big thing, type AK in the comments. If his story is one of the great what-ifs in golf for you, type what could have been. I read every single one. And then it all came apart, not in a dramatic public collapse, but through a slow accumulation of injuries that eventually swallowed his career whole. The problem started with his hands, his thumbs, his wrists. Then came a severe Achilles injury. The aggressive, all-out way Kim played and lived seemed to catch up with his body all at once. He underwent surgery in 2012, and after that, he simply stopped. He played his last PGA Tour event and then disappeared from professional golf entirely. What followed was one of the strangest sagas in modern sport. For over a decade, Anthony Kim did not play competitive golf. He did not give interviews. He largely vanished from public life. Rumors swirled constantly. There were reports of a massive insurance policy that would pay out a fortune if he never played professional golf again, a policy that allegedly made returning to the sport financially irrational. There were stories of personal struggles, of a wild lifestyle, of a man who had walked away from a gift that millions would have killed to possess. Nobody knew exactly where he was or what he was doing. The most talented young golfer of his generation had become a ghost. For 11 years, the golf world wondered what had happened to Anthony Kim. His name became shorthand for wasted potential, for the cruelty of injuries, for the fragility of greatness. Players who came up alongside him went on to win majors and build Hall of Fame careers, while Kim, who had been better than most of them, simply did not exist in the competitive landscape anymore. Then, in 2024, the impossible happened. Anthony Kim returned. He signed with LIV Golf and walked back onto a professional golf course for the first time in more than a decade. The comeback was one of the most anticipated stories in years, a genuine sporting resurrection. Fans who remembered his brilliance were desperate to see if any of the old magic remained. The narrative wrote itself, the prodigal talent returning to claim the career that injuries had stolen. But the reality was painful to watch. The 11 years away had taken their toll in ways that could not be undone. Kim struggled badly. The fearless brilliance was gone, replaced by the rust and uncertainty of a man who had not competed at the highest level in over a decade. The results were poor, often near the bottom of the leaderboards. The comeback, rather than restoring his legend, served mostly as a reminder of how much had been lost, how completely those missing years had eroded a once-generational talent. And this is where his most recent reflections on his career become so heartbreaking. Kim has spoken with raw honesty about the toll his journey has taken, about the struggles that went far beyond golf. He has been open about battling personal demons during his years away, about dark periods, about the difficulty of reconciling who he was at his peak with who he became in the wilderness. The brash kid with the limitless future has become a man who has lived a great deal of pain, who walked away from greatness and spent over a decade discovering how hard it is to find your way back to anything. The announcement and reflections on his career carry a particular kind of sadness because they are tinged with acceptance rather than triumph. This was not the story of a comeback that worked. It was the story of a man trying to make peace with a career that never became what it should have been. Kim has acknowledged the reality of his situation, the difficulty of competing at his age after so long away, the recognition that the player he once was is not coming back. There is a maturity in it, a hard-won honesty, but there is no escaping the grief underneath. He had it all, and he lost most of it, and the time that was taken from him cannot be returned. What makes the Anthony Kim story so uniquely heartbreaking is the completeness of the loss. With most fallen athletes, you can point to a specific cause, a career-ending injury, a scandal, a single catastrophic moment. Kim's decline was murkier and more total. The injuries were real, but the 11-year disappearance, the insurance policy rumors, the personal struggles, the complete withdrawal from the sport, all of it combined into something larger and sadder than any single explanation could capture. He did not just lose his career to injury. He lost a decade of his life, the prime years that should have been filled with majors and Ryder Cups and a place among the greats, and he has had to live with the knowledge of exactly what he walked away from. The contrast with his peers makes the loss sting even more. Anthony Kim came up in the same generation as players who would go on to define golf for the next 15 years. Many of the men he competed against and frequently beat in his early 20s went on to win major championships, accumulate Ryder Cup appearances, and build the kind of careers that end with Hall of Fame consideration. Kim, who at his peak was regarded as more talented than most of them, has none of that. No major championship. The career that was supposed to rival anyone's simply stopped before it could produce the trophies his ability promised. When you watch footage of the 2008 Ryder Cup, of that Augusta record round, of the young man with the giant belt buckle attacking the course without fear, it is almost impossible to reconcile with the knowledge of what came after. There is also a broader lesson buried in the Anthony Kim story, one about the brutal randomness of athletic careers. We tend to assume that the most talented players will inevitably rise to the top and stay there, that greatness is a guarantee for those gifted enough to possess it. Kim is the counter-argument. He had as much raw ability as anyone of his generation, and it was not enough to protect him from injury, from the body breaking down, from the strange and difficult path his life took. Talent, it turns out, guarantees nothing. The margin between a Hall of Fame career and a cautionary tale can be a few injuries, a few wrong turns, a few years that disappear and never come back. Kim lived on the wrong side of that margin, and his story is a sobering reminder of how fragile even the most certain-seeming greatness can be. At 40 years old, Anthony Kim is a long way from the 23-year-old who dismantled Sergio Garcia at Valhalla and rewrote the record book at Augusta. The talent that made him a phenomenon is part of the past now, and his honest reflections on his career are the words of a man who has finally stopped running from what happened and started trying to understand it. There is something redemptive in that honesty, in his willingness to speak openly about the pain and the mistakes and the loss. But the tragedy is undeniable. Anthony Kim was one of the most gifted golfers his country ever produced, and the world only got to see a fraction of what he could have been. The fearless kid who was supposed to be the next great American golfer became instead the greatest what-if the sport has known. And his heartbreaking honesty about it all is the closest thing to closure that a story this sad can offer. If this one stayed with you, drop a like before you scroll away. It tells the algorithm to push these stories to people who remember the names that should have been legends. And subscribe if you want more of these, the ones that tell the whole truth. There are more coming.